Доброго дня. Після звільнення населених пунктів Київської області одним з важливих напрямків роботи залишається забезпечення громадської безпеки та порядку в населених пунктах.
Securing public order and maintenance of public order is one of the main areas. The National Guard of Ukraine began these activities since the war began. We would like to inform you on the maintenance and securing public order in the liberated Oblast. Today we are joined by the head of the Department for Public Security, Colonel Hrytsenko. Since the full-scale war of Russian Federation against Ukraine began, National Guard of Ukraine, as part of the law enforcement, has been repelling the aggression together with the armed forces. NGO is participating actively in the defense of the cities of Kharkiv, Mariupol, and other settlements of the area of hostilities where the combats are taking place. The NGU are also part of the liberation of the Kyiv city and Kyiv area. Together with that, the NGU, together with other territorial defense bodies and Ukrainian army, fulfills a number of other areas in different settlements and cities of Ukraine, including those that have been liberated from the Russian aggression, to secure the uninterrupted traffic in the streets leading out or into the cities. NGU, together with the territorial defense and armed forces, are fulfilling their duties in almost 200 block post checkpoints. We are monitoring the public security environment. We've set up more than 150 surveillance points to protect the infrastructural facilities. We have been monitoring a number of facilities, including infrastructure, critical infrastructure, embassies, and missions of different countries to Ukraine, to preclude looting and other types of criminal activities. We are patrolling the streets and cities. We have engaged 1,200 personnel, hundreds of vehicles, and 40 dogs. So far, we have the following results. The committed crimes have been tracked by our personnel, and we have apprehended 1,700 persons, including the subversion forces of the enemy. We have forfeited almost 500 ammunitions, knives, 15 and 29 grenades, and also explosives. After the liberation of the territories that were occupied by the Russian forces, we have initiated the demining activities to defuse the explosive devices in the streets, and also we started patrolling the streets in Petri, Borodyanka, Bucha, and Hostomel, and Kyiv, of course, and different regions in the Kyiv Oblast. We have noticed a number of cases of looters when the ownership was robbed by the criminals. Patrolling is conducted 24 hours a day with the hundreds of personnel, the personnel using vehicles and with the help of the dogs, together with the local governments, authorities, and ordinary citizens. The number of criminal acts and looting has significantly decreased. As for the observers of curfew. The National Guard is keeping track of that. We are also fighting subversive groups and identifying ammunitions, weapons, and illegal weapons. We are also patrolling the streets of the capital city, Kyiv. Since the 13th of April, we have designated a number of areas and districts in the city where we have 150 personnel divided into 50 patrols. In spite of the martial law, we are conducting different searches, so-called surface searches. We're also living up to the legislation. The legislation specifies that the searches must be conducted in a prescribed way with certain devices. That's why we have both male and female personnel to ensure the curfew rules. We also are keeping track of the discipline of the citizens. The NGU personnel have apprehended 30 persons for different criminal acts. We have identified 8 dead bodies as the result of the Russian aggression, and all the forfeited items have been given over to the national police. Most graphic examples of our patrols are instances where we identified documentation used by the aggressor in the Kyiv Oblast and their means of communications, intelligence modules and other devices. In one of the Bucha region, the NGU personnel had identified the command post of the Russian subversive group, and we had retrieved their official documentations list of their names, of their alias, and we have given over those documents to the National Security Service and so on. We had also identified the location of the storage of ammunitions for tanks and artillery ammunitions. Our partners are not standing behind. The National Guard of Ukraine is a fully fledged member of the International Gendarmerie Association, and Portugal has also given us over armored vehicles. We are receiving them, and those vehicles will be used to fulfill our tasks. Thank you, and glory to Ukraine. If there are questions, we are ready to answer them. You mentioned about 1,700 people being detained. Part of those are part of the reconnaissance and subversive groups. What are other kinds of people? These people are not suspected of the commitment of criminal acts. There are people who are suspected to be participating in the surveillance and subversive groups. In general, people apprehended. We have initiated criminal cases and criminal proceedings, including the possession of the drugs, administrative violations when the rules of curfew are breached. Mainly, these are the most characteristic features. Those people who have been apprehended because of the suspicion of their participation in the subversion groups, they have been given over to the armed forces. I would like to add here the fact that National Guard of Ukraine actively participates, interacts with the national police in order to identify those criminals most effectively. We are guided by the joint lists of suspects. So sometimes we apprehended persons who were already in search,
Ще одне запитання нам від
were on the wanted list.
Нещодавно була інформація
Another question is about the information
у
about the possible imminent
вірянам стосовно
uh, acts during the Easter period. Would you advise people to stay at home rather than attending churches? Our departments and units are ready to secure and maintain public order during the Easter season. We have already devised some plans. The personnel have been assigned. We believe that going to the church doesn't make a lot of sense now. Hopefully, we will be understood by the Ukrainian citizenry and people will be watching the liturgy online on their television. Now is not the time for mass congregations in the churches or other public events. The Russian Federation is constantly bombing Ukrainian territory. No one is safe now. So our recommendation would be to watch the Easter liturgy online. As for attending different public events when we have a lot of people gathered, the local authorities, almost all of them, publish information whether people can now return to their settlements and cities, including the attendance of churches. This kind of information is also a recommendation published by the official authorities and military administrations. Another question from the Ukrinform agency. I was driving today from Bucha through all the checkpoints over to the Zhytomyr road through Kyiv. You can witness how thoroughly your people are working, how attentive they are to every car and every driver. Would you tell us whether there are instances where you can see some unexpected guests coming from the woods? The unexpected guests at the checkpoints where our personnel are working, we haven't seen such cases so far. However, we are not safe in that regard. We must be on guard for what you are calling unexpected guests. Our command have devised special plans to respond to such cases. We stand ready to repel such instances together with the National Police and Territorial Defense. In addition, I would like to mention that the management and the personnel of the NGU and law enforcement officers serving at the checkpoints are grateful to all the citizens of Ukraine for their understanding of what's going on and observing the proceedings of the curfew. We see a number of cases of reconnaissance and subversion groups acting in the Kyiv region. So a thorough check at different checkpoints, whether on the way to or out of the capital city. Such activities bring very good results. And this is to say how effective we are in securing public order. Now, of course, we all know that the Kyiv region has been liberated from the occupier. As for the city of Kyiv, you mentioned that you are observing the situation in the city. How safe it is to drive around the city in the daytime or at night? What can we expect in the nearest future from the reconnaissance and subversion groups? You cannot drive or move in this city at the time of curfew unless you have a specific permit. You know from all the media that there are no safe places in Ukraine today. To move around the city of Kyiv in daytime, we are all have our duties and chores. Businesses are reopening, people are coming back, public transportation is working. At night, during the curfew, the movement of the vehicles or the movement of individuals is only allowed with the special permits. We identified a tripwire yesterday in one of the districts of the capital city. So our walking patrols, as I mentioned, is very effective and necessary. They are observing the situation, the state of the public order and safety. All those hidden or sleeping reconnaissance subversion groups that are still are in the city. We don't exclude that they are working here, and we are doing our best, everything possible and impossible to ensure the safety of our citizens. Do you have any more questions? In that case, thank you very much for your attention. Let me remind you that we were talking about the law enforcement area of the NGU activities, particularly in the city of Kyiv. NGU personnel are also active defending our dear Ukraine with uh, with the help of the armed forces. Wherever the hostilities are taking place, we will prevail and win. Thank you very much.